Hey everybody, thank you for joining Boosted.ai on this place in Toronto, very sunny day. Um, Today we're going to be talking about how people can use AI to create and research thematic investment products. And we have here our managing director, Porter Fraker, who's going to walk us through uh, some of the issues that folks have with manual creation, some of the ways that AI is helping people, and what we see for the future. So, without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to our managing director of sales, Porter Fraker. Thanks,
Thanks,
Porter.
Fraser, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Super excited to walk you through presentation on thematic investing and how AI tools can assist you in this process. Number one, aiding you in research itself, but also helping to create thematic baskets to help you get exposure to a particular theme that you're looking to do some work on. But I think a good place to start is what exactly is thematic investing. A quick definition is, a forward-looking investment approach that aims to identify specific ideas or trends and companies that benefit from them, but ultimately profit from them. I really think about this as the next generation of sector funds. As we think about GICS classifications in general, there's been tons of talk about how the lines are becoming very blurry in terms of where do stocks fit in particular sectors. And I think thinking about it in terms of thematics, allows you to get exposure to a megatrend or a theme within that megatrend across multiple sectors at the same time. And a good example of this, I heard about this, talking with someone the other day, was around the future of food. And the idea of the GICS classification would be food stocks typically would fall into distributors, manufacturers, and retailers. And all of these fell into the consumer staples GICS sector. And as we think about the future of food, there can be so many other sectors that can be involved as we think about smart agriculture or agricultural equipment, biotech companies, chemicals companies, logistics companies. So very quickly, you get exposure across 6 or 7 gig sectors by thinking about this one theme, like the future of food. But it's a very exciting market. We're getting a ton of interest from institutional investors down to retail investors. The market's growing super fast. As you can see here, AUM tripled between 2019 and 2022. We're over $1 trillion in AUM exposed to these products in the market today. So again, ton of interest, ton of people doing work on this. And kind of want to understand why thematic investing, and it's really allowing you to have a belief in the growth potential of a particular theme, and then again get exposure to that as best you can across multiple industries, sub-industries, sectors, etc. Allows investors to deploy capital in a way that works for them. So if you're looking to get exposure to something that you believe in, like green energy, or something that's hot in the marketplace at this point in time, generative AI, or thinking about customizing that particular theme you want to get exposed to. Maybe you want to get exposure to green energy, but you don't want to get exposure to any traditional oil companies that say that they are going green. So it's a way to be targeted than in a more traditional sector fund. An active management control over your investing is definitely appealing to a lot of consumers. As we think about the manual methodology to researching thematics, definitely a time-consuming exercise, right? You need to determine the theme that you're looking to do research on, and then the sky's the limit. These days there's tons and tons of data out there, tons of research. And so while that's super helpful, it can be a daunting task to try to sift through all of this on your own. So you really need to get into understanding all of the industries that are involved in your chosen theme. You need to research economic impacts, geopolitical impacts, And once you've figured that out, now we need to understand the stocks that are going to be involved in this. Doing research bottoms up, understanding who are going to be the winners, who are going to be the losers, how exposed is this stock to this particular theme and why, how are my revenues going to be affected. And so we can get access to data, whether it be through data providers, thematic research providers. But once you've determined all of the data that you want to do your research with, it's going to be spending tons of time, hours, days, weeks, months, understanding all of the research that's involved, scanning through company filings, trade publications, economic papers, research reports, etc. And really, like once you get to your understand which stocks you want to get involved in, then you have to think about how do I want to deploy my capital? Do I have portfolio construction parameters that I want to meet? How often do I want to think about changing my investments? But you're going to have to continually monitor for changes in the theme itself or changes in the stocks. And so again, a ton of time and effort goes into this process. And as we think about generative AI and the rise of these large language models, we want to think about how machines can help us in this process. The other problems with this manual research is also adaptability. These themes are constantly changing and evolving. A good example of this is generative AI as a theme. It's a relatively new theme. It's been out for about a year and a half. And I think at first it was like, okay, who's going to have exposure to these new LLMs that are hitting the market? And we think about Meta and Google and Microsoft, and which chip companies are going to be involved. And we saw NVIDIA rise to the top there. And then it was, what's the next derivative? Well, I want to get exposure to data centers, and which companies are going to be able to use this to make their workforce more efficient. But as the year progressed, it was like, now we are understanding that these LLMs take up tons of energy. And so very quickly, a theme can evolve to buying utility stocks is now going to give you exposure to an extremely hot theme like generative AI. So again, constantly adapting, constantly changing. Want to specify keeping up with this is extremely time consuming. Doing the research is extremely time consuming. You're at the whim of the data providers that you choose. So specificity can be a problem here as well. And then line of sight, not just on the theme in general, but looking at companies, understanding if they're coming in or out of the theme. So again, just a ton of information, a ton of work that needs to be done to keep up with the pace of the information flow that we have going on today. And so as we think, our mantra at Boosted AI has always been the human plus the machine is always going to have a better outcome than the machine on its own or the human on its own. I think we're all being tasked with doing way more with less these days. And so, we think of these as a nice tool that have specific purposes. And what we want to do is put them to work and make our research process as efficient as possible. Again, millions and millions of sources of data out there. Let the machine analyze that data. Let it sort that data for you. Let it summarize that data for you. Let it allow you to get the most out of the data that you are analyzing and paying for. And really have it be in a simple, easy to use, customized toolbox that can be basically a virtual AI associate that's riding alongside of you on your everyday. And so today I'm going to walk through an example in the electric vehicles market. I think it's an interesting dynamic theme that's a mega trend really in the market, but has a ton of sub themes, ton of different sectors that are at play, whether it be from raw materials and lithium to technology companies to logistics companies, consumer discretionary companies. So it's touching a lot of bases in terms of the theme itself. How do we understand the theme? How do we find stocks that can get us exposure to this theme? And then think about, once you have all of that information, how do I want to express that in terms of buying and selling stocks? Do I have a particular portfolio that I'd like to build? Do I have position sizing limits? Do I have risk parameters that I like to follow? Market cap minimums, ADV limits that I need to think about in terms of liquidity. And so again, understanding that once I do all this research, I want to put some money to work. And then again, we have to think about continually monitoring our investments on a go-forward basis. And so what I'm going to do now is open up the Boosted Insights platform, walk you through how our large language models are working, and then discuss a little bit around, putting a basket to work and thinking about optimizing that basket. And so again, with electric vehicles in mind, and how does the Boosted platform actually understand a theme to begin with? So we have proprietary large language model methodology that we use on the platform. It's actually multiple language models working at the same time. But really, you can query in any theme that you would want here. Again, I chose electric vehicles. And then I want to cross-reference it.
Hey, Porter, sorry to interrupt you here. I think you're not sharing your screen. If you're doing if you're showing insights, so maybe just try it one more time. There we go. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And so as I'm thinking about electric vehicles, getting back to here, how the language model works, we have, again, multiple language models working together. Query in your theme. Our language model has access to over 150,000 different sources of information, whether that be company filings, trade publications, earnings transcripts, research reports, magazines, etc. And basically within 10 to 15 minutes, it will come back to you with a report on that theme that you're looking to do work on. Again, give you a quick summary as it pertains to that stock universe that you're looking to traffic in. As we come down below, I think this is a super useful tool. We have a developments timeline, which basically is a living bibliography of everything that the machine has read as it pertains to this particular theme over the last year and a half. So you have this nice timeline of everything that it's been reading about. As you click into each development, you can get tons of information in terms of articles to read. And so again, if you want to, as far as you want to dive in, there'll be tons of rich information in here for you to have access to. And once it has done all of the reading, it's going to basically bucket this theme into multiple thematic impacts. And as we think about these thematic impacts, the machine is going to be looking for what's involved in electric vehicles. And so we can see like a growth in EV infrastructure development or increased investment in battery technology, increased demand for electric vehicles. So it's going to take this, categorize it, and then for each category, it's going to identify stocks that will be affected by these categories. And once these stocks are identified, we then do a deep dive on those stocks individually to understand how much these stocks will be impacted by this particular theme and why. So reading all information around company filings, 10Ks, Qs, earnings transcripts, research reports, understanding from a stock level perspective, how are these stocks going to be affected by the theme we're taking a look at. So we can see in a boost in EV manufacturing, we have 34 stocks here that are affected. We have impact related developments for this particular sub-theme, but then we have a list of securities here of like, okay, we have Workhorse, Rockwell Collins, Rambus, etc. If it's a stock that I don't know that much about, or maybe I want to understand why the stock is connected to this theme, we get a ton of rich information here where the machine is going to explain to me how rising electric vehicle adoption is going to impact Workhorse as the stock. So again, thinking about the amount of time this can save you, whether you are looking at electric vehicles for the first time, or if you have an electric vehicles thematic product out there, the machine, in 10 to 15 minutes is going to be able to leapfrog you ahead here, have tons of information to get you started. Again, not everything that you're going to need at the end of the day, but save you hours, even days of work here of getting you up to speed on a particular theme. And if you again do have a electric vehicle thematics going, you have eyes and ears for you working 24/7, reading everything that's available to the machine to be able to give you insights, make sure nothing slips through the cracks for you as it pertains to your theme, maybe give you some new ideas for stocks to put into your product. But ultimately now, again, in 10 to 15 minutes time, I have 60 stocks within this universe that are going to give me exposure to electric vehicles as a theme. And then again, as I discussed before, break it out into sector exposure. Not only am I going to get exposure to this theme in general, but I'm getting exposure across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different gig sectors. And so again, just to rehash, like the time-saving capabilities here, adding efficiency to your research process. This is how we're working with it in terms of being a research tool. And so once you have this information, I have 60 stocks that can get me exposure. What do I want to do with that? Or maybe you don't want to go down the single stock route. The machine's also going to be scanning through thousands and thousands of different ETFs and show you, if you do want to get exposure to this theme, here's a list of ETFs that you can look to buy to get exposure to this theme. But if you want to go down the route of doing it yourself, then we can think about, okay, I have 60 stocks here. What do I want to do with that information? Maybe I want to make my screening process a little bit more dynamic. So we have a tool in our platform called Discovery Blocks, where again, we can think about using this thematic filter as one piece of a screen that I'm looking to use. And so maybe that being one piece, I'm looking at electric vehicles. I also want to find stocks that have neutral to highly positive news sentiment at this point in time. Maybe I want to think about cross-referencing it with a particular alpha quant model, where we have machine learning algorithms that are ranking stocks based on fundamentals, technicals, and macro features. And then maybe I want to have specific factor exposures in terms of my screening process. So I want to find stocks with a certain amount of momentum or growth or volatility, or maybe there's certain features I want to filter for in terms of book to price ratio or analyst expectations. Are these in range? And so I can take that list of 60 stocks and whittle it down to 46. And now I have, again, a quick screen for me to do some research on in terms of getting exposure to this electric vehicles theme. Or maybe I, excuse me, want to take that 60 stock basket that I showed you on the page before and create an equal weighted thematic basket to get exposure to. And basically we can drop that into our portfolio workspace and say, give me as much analytics as you can on this particular basket. Or maybe I want to cross-reference it with another ETF that is exposed to electric vehicles. And we can get a ton of rich information here in terms of, number one, thinking about that quant model I was showing you before. Of those 60 stocks, my quant model is recommending that you sell 13 of those. So maybe I want to take that into consideration before I ultimately construct my basket. Gives you a ton of news summaries for the names within there. It's going to break down your basket into sector allocations, give you information on your top 5 holdings. Will also show you exposure at this point in time to other themes that are prevalent in the market today. So not just rising electric vehicle adoption, but expanding deployment of AI robots or expansion of Internet of Things. You're getting exposure to other themes that are in the market, not just this EV thematic sleep that I have going. As we think about analysis of the basket as well, we say that, well, now that I have this basket, like, what other risks am I exposing myself to? And so we can show risk allocation in terms of factor exposures in a traditional sense of saying, which style factors am I exposed to? I have negative exposure to the value factor, good positive exposure to growth, but my portfolio is a super volatile portfolio, as we can think about in terms of the stocks that we're trafficking in here. So again, giving more rich information around risk analytics. And then the idea is, once we have this established, maybe I want to think about reducing my volatility exposure. How can I do that? And so taking the next step from here, we can think about, okay, maybe I want to optimize my portfolio. Maybe I want to give it certain rules to say, I want 40 stocks max, and I want it only to invest in the top 80% of rankings in terms of that 60 stock portfolio that I have there. Here's a position sizing limit for me. How do I want to trade it, right? Do I want it to rebalance every day, every month, every year? And in terms of optimization, do I want to be able to optimize my portfolio for Sharpe ratio, or to reduce my risk, or to maybe track a particular index? So we have tons of different optimizers available as well. And maybe, if I wanted to neutralize that volatility factor, we can put optimizers in place there. And so tons of bells and whistles in terms of how we want to, number one, analyze that basket of stocks, but number two, how would we like to deploy this in a systematic fashion? And so once we go through this, we can add that, and then on a go-forward basis, it's going to look to rebalance, add names, optimize the portfolio at whatever cadence that you would like. But with that, I walked through this relatively quickly. I'll turn it back over to Fraser and open it up for questions.
Great, thanks, Porter. I just going to share my screen here to share. Wouldn't be doing marketing if I didn't want people to take a look at the QR code here. So if anybody is interested in hearing more, feel free to pull out your phone and take a picture of this, and it'll drive you to our website to get more. If I would just kind of sort of recap some of the stuff that you talked about, Porter, it's that, doing this research and creating these thematics is really time consuming. There's not as much flexibility as a person might like, and then there's not necessarily as much adaptability as a person might like. So kind of the benefits, I think, of using artificial intelligence to be doing this work instead is that it's certainly making your life a lot faster, as pretty much every application of AI is. Makes life easier and faster and more efficient. On the flexibility piece, it lets you kind of like do what you want instead of letting other folks, other data providers choose it for you. And I think the thing that was really interesting is how adaptable AI can be. That, like take data centers, for example. Maybe we didn't know that generative AI would have such a, like, the data centers would have such a big impact there. And then even like cooling of data centers. How do you think of companies in those sorts of fields as well? So it's giving you a lot of adjacent companies that are not necessarily what we would think of as wholly related to the theme, which I think is a really important sort of distinction there. So forgive me here, I'm going to pull up my some questions for you here, but I think a lot of people are basically kind of curious about the notion of how you can do how you can create these, and sort of what are the hot baskets that people are interested in these days. So if you could kind of speak to some of the ones that people have been caring about. I know ESG is a big one, maybe some of the other ones that are interested in. Like,
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say yeah, ESG is definitely a big one. It's also, more of like a mega trend, right? There's so many different ways to play ESG, and some themes within it, right? Water scarcity being a hot topic. How do we get exposure to that? I would say like social impact, companies on like a social impact, and so that as well. You brought up one, liquid cooling and data centers has been extremely hot in terms of people looking to do research there. I talked about one as well before, like the future of food. There's so many different aspects in terms of like smart technology around agriculture and sustainable farming. And so I think I would say that is a good summary of a few that we've been hearing a
Great.
ton of.
Great, thank you. One of the questions here, I think you kind of covered this a little bit in when you were doing the portfolios page on the risk stuff. But the person is asking about how, in addition to helping pick these thematic investments, are you helping control risk? So if you could just kind of walk through a little bit some of the additional pieces that AI can help with on the risk front, I think that would be great.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I would say that um, uh, as we think about constructing, or as we think about the themes in general, right, the machine is doing a very good job of synthesizing data, getting you to a point of here, basically identifying stocks for you and saying, here's a list of stocks that can get you exposed to a particular theme. And you can say, okay, I want to use all of these stocks, but once you do that, you need to understand, what are the risks in the market that I'm exposing myself to by putting this theme to work, right? And I think we showed in our portfolio workspace, we can understand how exposed we are to traditional risk factors like momentum, growth, volatility, et cetera. And you could quickly see that being involved in this basket, I was super exposed, almost 2 standard deviations above normal in terms of my volatility exposure, maybe a little bit negative on the momentum side. And so as we think about, okay, I want to get exposure here, how do we think about controlling that risk? I think the interesting part about our portfolio optimization or suggestion portion of the tool is you can put in parameters of here's how I want my portfolio to look. I want a certain amount of volatility exposure, a certain amount of momentum exposure. And if you go out of bounds there, the machine is going to alert you and basically suggest trades and say, if you want to get inbounds, maybe you should sell these 2 stocks and maybe buy this stock. And this can get you back to closer to where you would like to be. And so I think number one, just the alerts in general and monitoring. You have this machine that's working for you 24/7 and giving you alerts based on, again, preferences that you're giving it. So it's really just doing what it's told, but it's going to be, never taking a break, always working for you, always looking to, read everything it has available to it to help your research process be more efficient.
So, last question for the afternoon. Today's going to be a bit of a, we're going to do a half hour for the folks so they can have a little bit of extra time for lunch. But what, we covered thematics pretty thoroughly here, so thank you very much for that. But what are the other kind of use cases that you're seeing the most interested for investment managers, asset managers to be using AI these days?
Yeah, so I would say that, like, especially with the rise of these large language models over the last year, it's really how can we have these, it doesn't need to just be in thematics, but how can we allow these language models to help me be way more efficient, right? We have tons and tons of data, access to everything out there, and I want to be able to deploy this machine to be able to say, here's what I'm really interested in, or maybe I'm doing research on a stock, and here's what I think about this stock. Right? I think the reason that Microsoft is going to continue to work is that there's going to be growth in Azure, and OpenAI is going to explode or But I see, EPS targets going this way and revenue targets. And so here are like the KPIs that I'm really focusing on for the stock to be successful. And so you're taking that information and putting it into a large language model. So it's reading based on your particular thesis and being able to come back to you and say, from everything that I have access to in terms of reading, um, uh, what I'm reading is either confirming your thesis or refuting your thesis and why. And basically, again, 24/7 working for you and able to give you information that otherwise you'd have to go out and scour the internet and look through research reports all on your own to do. So it's really like this nice virtual research assistant that's riding along with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Porter. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today, talking about how AI is helping you with thematic investing and thematic research. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, really appreciate you all joining us today. So thank you very much. And
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.